morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to Season 4 and episode number 412 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Crier Media Network. Yeah. Yeah. Today, recording day, is Wednesday, June 26, 2024, and it is a beautiful sunny day here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, eh? And with me, as always, seemingly struggling with a mic stand, is my dear friend, Mr. Grizzly.
It's the Lola Cam.
It's the Lola Cam, okay. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. We have a very special guest for you today, Kits and Cubs, but before we bring her in, Mr. Grizzly, how is your mental health doing today, sir?
You know, sir, it's doing surprisingly good. I'm feeling great this morning. Don't ask why. I don't know. And I'm just going to accept the fact that I'm feeling good. And that's it. I mean, you don't look a gift horse in the mouth, right?
No. Did you take the win?
Exactly.
Something a few people had trouble with yesterday. But I digress.
Yeah. Well, let's not go there.
I digress. Before we get to our special guest today, just a couple of things I had to mention that are actually important. The federal government and the Department of Global Affairs issued a warning encouraging all Canadians still in Lebanon to leave the country. They say it's time to get out now because it looks like war between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon is looking more likely. And if that happens, the Canadian government's warning that it may not be able to run evacuation flights. And when there are already cases of people there saying, for example, when you want to take a taxi to the airport, the driver would normally charge you $400. Now they're charging $600.
Okay, so yeah, it's get out now.
Yeah, get out now.
It's Lebanon uses a pound, but it's their pound, correct?
I believe so, but I don't know if things have changed because I know that they had the basically an economic collapse.
Yeah, because it was worthless. It was not even the paper worth it. The paper was printed on it at one point. It was they kind of went Zimbabwe with hyperinflation, so that it's basically collapsed.
Yeah, indeed, and as well, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the other thing that's going on is that the fire in the Churchill Falls area has jumped. Yes. The electric plant in Churchill Falls is now being operated remotely. The last remaining workers have been evacuated. 2 transmission lines were tripped, and that knocked out power in Labrador City and Wabush. And now Labrador City is pulling some backup power from Quebec. but the people in Wabash are still in the dark, and the outage could last several days. So those are the two things that are really important that are going on right now that people should know about it. All right, now to the good stuff. As you know, Kits and Cubs, it is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and we had the mental health walk on the 15th, but we said that programming would continue for a while because we still had some guests that we weren't able to all get in before the walk. And one of them is with us today. One of the agencies that helped us do what we have tried to do, because it's first year, we're establishing links, but hopefully we're building some good bones for the future, is the Canadian Mental Health Association. And through them, as you know, we put up a link for people to make donations, specifically if they would like to make donations to the Canadian Mental Health Association. And we had some response, which was nice. Thank you very much to those who have. By the way, the link is still up because we said we would keep the portals open until we get all our guests through our show. So, and I'll have Mr. Grizzly put it up in the chat later on because I don't have it handy at the moment.
No problem.
But our guest is the Executive Director of Peer Support Canada, which I believe is one of the programs of the Canadian Mental Health Association. But if I'm wrong, I'm sure that I will get a gentle correction. And we asked them to come on because we want to get Canadians familiar with some of our partner organizations, but also because every day is a good day to talk about mental health.
There's no bad time to discuss your mental health.
Right?
Never.
So Kits and Cubs, please put your paws up and give a big round of applause. I love doing that.
Yes, I know.
It's so much fun. To our guest, Allison Dunning. Yay! Welcome to the Beaver Lodge.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
And Allison, I always ask Mr. Grizzly how his mental health is doing today, but we also ask it of our guests. How is your mental health doing today?
I think I'm at like a 7 out of 10, which is pretty good for me.
That's good.
Yeah. I am just riding the waves of some tech issues at work and not the best sleep, but honestly, it's so sunny outside. I took my dog for a nice walk this morning.
Did the same.
That helped me out. So feeling pretty good. And I have a cup of coffee, so that also helps.
I'd say that's winning.
Twinsies.
Yeah.
I've got my coffee and my Grizzly mug, and I took my dog out earlier, so yeah.
Nice.
Beaver mug.
Nice. I actually have a paddling mug right here. Actually.
There you go.
Yeah.
Are you a dragon boater or a canoeist?
I'm a canoeist. I love paddling, nature, camping. Yeah, it's my jive.
I was a competitive dragon boater for years until I tore my right shoulder, and now it's like, nope, not even going to risk it. But I watched a report because Tim Hortons Dragon Boat Festival just took place in Ottawa this past weekend, and I was watching a report on the CBC, and the reporter said, "You can see all the rowers." I'm like, "Oh man, I can tell you, every single person there that sees that is freaking out. They're like, we're paddlers, not rowers." I was just like, he gonna get spanked for that one. There's a distinct difference though, and people who paddle will tell you there's a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Allison, I was wondering if you could maybe just start off by telling our kids what the Peer Support Canada is.
Yeah, so I can tell you a little bit about both the Canadian Mental Health Association and Peer Support Canada, because you were right. Peer Support Canada is a program of CMHA. So maybe I'll start off with CMHA. So CMHA is sort of the largest community mental health organization across Canada. So it's made up of a number of branches and divisions all across Canada. So the CMHA branches and divisions tend to provide a variety of mental health supports for their communities. So that looks like everything from sort of counseling services to sort of case management, sometimes housing supports, things like that, because we know that those are so intricately connected to mental health.
Yes.
Sort of youth programming, and lots of peer support services as well. And so I work within the peer support program at CMHA National called Peer Support Canada. And we try to provide sort of training, leadership, and capacity building for peer support services across Canada. So I can tell you more about peer support if you want to hear it. Yes. Okay. I'm just glad that you do want to hear about it. We can talk about peer support forever. But peer support involves connecting people with shared lived experiences. So generally within the mental health system, that looks like somebody who's been through their own mental health experiences like I have. And we sort of equip those people with training and tools and stuff like that to be the ones to provide support to other people that are struggling with their own mental health. So, it's sort of an approach that's not based off of clinical degrees or sort of structured approaches. It's really based off of humans being humans, and showing empathy and mutuality and honoring people's right to choose, and things like that.
All right. May I ask what drew you to this type of work?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite questions. I'm honestly so privileged and lucky to work in a field that means so much to me personally. So my story of how I got into this was that I was about maybe 18 or 19 years old and really not doing well with my own mental health and sort of struggling a lot with that and not sure what I was going to do with my life. And I was looking for volunteer opportunities because I wasn't well enough to go to school at that point in time. And so I walked into a mental health organization in Toronto that was looking for volunteers and went through a bit of an interview process with them. And they asked during that interview, do you have your own mental health experiences? And I sort of expected what I usually get from that question, which is shut doors and judgment. And I said, yes, I do have my own mental health experiences. And they said, oh, that's so great. We love that. That's exactly what we're looking for. Please come and volunteer with us. And I was like, what is happening? This is not what I expected. This is a whole ball game. So anyways, just the experience of having those things that I'd been through that were classically very, very negative, being seen as a positive and being seen as a strength and being seen as something that I could use to help other people that were struggling was just such a revolutionary thing for me. Anyway, so I started volunteering in peer support service. So I would support on a warm line, so a phone line that's there to provide peer support services, and then ran a few groups and stuff like that. And then honestly, I've just worked my way up from there, and I have never left peer support. I don't plan on leaving peer support. I live and breathe peer support every day of my life now.
But for that to happen, it has to nourish you in a very particular way, more than the typical job. How does that do that for you?
Yeah, I think honestly in the frontline work, because a lot of what I do now is more sort of policy and advocacy and organization building and stuff, which I love. But I think the frontline work, honestly, is I cannot sit there as a peer offering support to somebody else, asking them, what have you done for yourself today? Where are you at? What kind of coping strategies are you using to deal with that? I can't sit there and ask somebody all those questions without having answers to those myself. So it really keeps me accountable to my own well-being, which I think I would not be as well as I am if that wasn't a part of my sort of daily life. And then I think it's just very rewarding to get to work in something that I love. I care about this. Everybody that knows me in my personal life knows that mental health is just incredibly important to me. I'm very open about my own experiences and stuff like that. And so it gives me a lot of energy to get to work in a space that I just love innately. Yeah.
I'm impressed with the fact that you knew that things weren't going well for you, and you're like, I can't go to school right now. I know so you went out and sought out the help you needed, which we, as in male presenting individuals such as myself, we don't tend to do that, number one. And number two, because of my generational gap, I'm 56 next Friday. We just didn't. And I tried to reach out, and did get some help in the 90s. And everybody around me did not want to hear anything about it. I'm like, I have depression. Why are you depressed? What are you sad about? I'm like, no. And I talk about this ad nauseum, and I know sometimes people get tired of hearing it, but if I stop talking about it, that's when you need to panic. That's when you need to be concerned. If I'm no longer talking about it, worry. Because that means, the meds aren't working anymore and I'm spiraling. I had a couple of days this week which were really rough. Monday the anxiety was so bad, I couldn't work. And I was a mess. My wife was like, what can I do? I'm like, darling, there's nothing you can do. It just takes time, and I'm trying to meditate and get through it and breathe through it. And it just wasn't working. And then of course, once I get through that, it's like the major crash afterwards, because your adrenaline is up as high as it can be. And then it falls away. And it's like, you breathe a sigh of relief for a few seconds. And then it's like, oh, all the brain chemistry is completely messed. And then the serious depression hits. So it was a couple of very rough days this week. So that's why I said when we first spoke this morning, I'm feeling great today. I'm going to roll with it. But it's one of those things where generationally, my generation, we were told you can talk about anything. But when you did, you were ridiculed, you were ostracized, you were chastised for it in many cases, told you have nothing to be sad about. It's like, no, it's not what it is.
Yeah.
And the younger generation, the millennials and Gen Z, are so open about it. And thank goodness. And one of the reasons we had our mental health walk was because men of all ages, and especially guys my age and up, simply do not talk about it. And they have no one to talk to about it. So the work you do, the advocacy you do, the organization that you're with, is very close to my heart, because it means a great deal that you're doing all these things to help people who didn't know help was available.
Yeah. And I think that things have definitely changed. Like it's definitely, I'm not denying that it's way easier for me to be able to have those conversations than previous generations. And I think it's such a good thing. We're talking about it. And I think sometimes there's still barriers, there's still stigma,
Yes.
There's still fear for sure. But I do appreciate that there's a level of awareness now and an acceptance. And I always have questions about sort of who that's accepted for and who's excluded from that acceptance, right? So, like as you mentioned, for men, honestly, my partner is a male, and I think he's grown up. I mean, we've been together for 10 years, and so he's learned that I advocate for it being okay to talk about his feelings and stuff like that, and so. I think we're still working on that, to be honest. But anyways, it's just interesting because for me, as a female and a cisgendered female, it has been relatively easy for me to be open and honest about that, and I know that that's a privilege, and it's not always the same for all genders, for all populations, for everybody else. So, yeah.
In practice, have you noticed? When men come to you versus women, what differences do you notice?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, honestly, there's less coming for services than there are female, generally. And then also, I think that there's so much more hesitancy. Like because a lot of the time, and to be honest, I don't do as much frontline work, so I'm pulling from experiences from a few years ago. But in those experiences, a lot of the time, the amount of time that it would take for there to be this like opening up and this like shared understanding, this mutuality, this trust, this like empathy thing going on where we could talk fairly freely about everything going on, it was way quicker, generally speaking, with females than it was with males. It would take, there'd be just a lot more hesitation and we had to do a lot more work on building trust with each other in order for people to open up a little bit. I also acknowledge too that like that's my experience as a female service provider, and I think that there's probably A little bit less of that with a male service provider, but still definitely challenges.
Curious.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can answer this question or not, so I'll just pose it.
Yeah.
Do you know if men open up more to women or to other men when it comes to their mental health? I don't expect you to have an answer for that, but I thought I'd ask.
No, it's a good question, and I can give my Allison, who's a human and doesn't know much, answer. But I think, to be honest, if I had to guess in terms of what I've seen socially more than like what I've seen in work, I think that there's more trust in opening up to women, honestly, because I think men to men, there's these like societal rules of we don't talk about this. And so you have to break that down twice, right? You have to break that down from the person wanting to talk about it. And you have to break that down from the male who has to also be willing to talk. You know what I mean? There's two people facing barriers to having that conversation, as opposed to when a male comes to me and says, hey, I want to talk about my mental health. I'm game, you know, like I'm ready. I'll meet you. Like, yeah, I talk about my mental health all the time. So this isn't something that I have to wrap my head around. You know what I mean? So that's, in a social basis, I think that's the case. But honestly, scientifically, statistically, I'm not sure.
I would tend to agree with you when it comes to that. Socially, I didn't know if you would have any sort of numbers on the scientific or stats or anything like that when it comes to in practice, if you will, or in counseling. But I have every reason to believe you are correct when it comes to men will open up easier to women than other men, and it's not an antitrust thing when it comes to other men. It's just we've been conditioned to not discuss those things.
It's an unlearning, right? Like it's
you have
to unlearn that. It's like, because generally speaking, men have been taught that we don't talk about this. We are tough. We you know, feelings are feminine and we are masculine. And so you have to unlearn all of that in order to have that conversation. Whereas I think there's some stereotypical sort of things that women have been taught that make us more ready and willing, in touch, with that, and we're allowed to be honest about it because it's not misaligned with who we're supposed to be when we put it out there.
Well,
I would. Sorry,
I was just going to say, in the way men's brains work completely different from women's. The way we encounter and the way we act and react to things. It's like you can ask me a simple question. You could say something to me like, "Oh, Paul, are you hungry?" And I'd say, "No." And that would be my answer. Meanwhile, you may have been thinking, well, I'm hungry. If I'm hungry, he must be hungry too. I'll get something to eat, and maybe he wants something. And, you know, we could be driving along somewhere, passing a restaurant, and you would, are you hungry? I'm like, no. And I'd keep driving, and you're like, well, I wanted something to eat. It's the way we process and emulate. Emulate, that's not the word I'm looking for. But it's the way we process information. With men, it's very much, in many aspects, very binary, in, out, logic, yes, no. You asked me a question, I gave you an answer, and then suddenly I'm in trouble because I didn't stop to get at the restaurant for the food that you wanted, but you didn't tell me you wanted food. You know, so it's the way we process information, I think, is entirely different. And women, I think, are just naturally in touch with their feelings. Please correct me if I'm wrong. More so than men. Men are in touch with their feelings to a lesser degree, certainly, but I think when it comes to just the natural, for want of a better term, natural order of things, women are more in touch with their feelings than men right from the get-go. And I think it's because women are discuss their feelings as little girls right up through adulthood, whereas little boys are allowed to discuss their feelings. And then when they get to school, that kind of comes to a screeching halt.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I'm sitting here asking the question, like, how do we undo that? Because it's so, you know, it's just, it's not right. You know what I mean? I just don't understand. Like, yeah, I think I benefit so much from being able to talk about, you know, what's going on and where I'm at and how I'm actually feeling, as opposed to the, hey, how are you? Good. You know, like that conversation drives me up the wall. So it's just such a nice thing for me. I meet with my therapist once every 2 weeks, not because I'm unwell, but because I love to talk about how I'm feeling and what I'm going through. And, you know, and because it helps maintain my well-being. But anyways, it's such a benefit for me to be able to talk about those things. And so how do we undo that schoolyard, tough guy mentality that comes up, right? And I have nieces and nephews, and I watch them and try to do my unlearning with them as much as I can get away with. But yeah, I just think that we have a long way to go. But I'm excited to see with this generation, because a lot of my friends are parents now, and I'm seeing this whole generation of very involved fathers and hands-on fathers, and fathers raising kids next to wives that are so open about this, and just so encouraging to their kids to talk about this, whether they're boys or girls. And so I'm just curious to see how that all plays out.
Well, they're undoing the generational trauma, I think, to a large degree. And it's like, I'm not going to allow this, what happened to me, to happen to my children. And I think, my parents are boomers, and a lot of what they went through, they refused to let happen to their children, me being one of them, of course. But there's other things that they went through that they didn't even recognize.
Totally. And that they didn't talk about, right? There's a line from a song or something that says something along the lines of, we're the children of the silent generation, right? And so we're the children of the generation that didn't talk about any of this stuff. And so I think by being a child of the generation that didn't talk about it, all I do is talk about it. So it's an interesting flip, I think, from previous generations.
Allison, when you were talking about the trust, it kind of got me thinking, because it was almost like there would be two stages, right? There would just be just trusting anyone first, because you're coming there, and sometimes I guess if you're fortunate enough, you're coming there when you're still doing well, but often I'm guessing you're coming when you're in distress. So you've got that first level, and then whether or not, like I'm seeing in the chat, a lot of people are saying, particularly men in the chat, that I felt more comfortable opening up to a woman. And I'm guessing it might be like a different type of concern, where you might want to wonder just how open can you be with regard when you're dealing with a woman. So you don't want to offend. And with a guy, it's like, well, what's he going to think of me? As opposed. So I'm sort of like seeing that. It's like, because for me, the times that I've gone to therapy, this is just speaking for me, and I've had the experience with both gender. It's really weird, because with women, I found it quicker to get to the spot where the emotions are raw, like really raw.
Yeah.
That's when you might be saying ugly truths about yourself that you don't really want to admit, stuff like that, but that are true. Or scary ones, or darker ones, right? Not necessarily ugly. But with the therapist that I had was male, it was like I was lying down, and it was like, I need strategies. And like it was like, how to. I'm going through this, like it's just like I've tried everything I know how to try. Like I'm willing to try anything to like suggest something that I have not thought of, because I've really racked my brain, and I was really looking for courses of action. And for the other one, I was really no, I need to get here, I guess. And eventually, like there's many paths to get to where it is you need to go. But my approach as a patient was different.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting. It sounds like you're saying basically that with a female therapist, that it was more of a processing kind of a thing,
right,
versus like maybe skills building,
right,
with a male. And
well,
I just, again, I think that's some more norms coming into play, which are like probably, honestly, both of those things are helpful, right? Sometimes I need to process what's going on and get deep down into like being able to name these feelings that are coming up and share those deep, dark thoughts that are coming up, and sometimes I need strategies and skills to address the situation, because it's World War III in my family, and I need, and I need it to calm down. Right. So, I think both of those things are important, and I just like almost like get defensive or something about it as well, because it sucks that, you know, there's this like male, we build skills and strategies and practicalities. Like, why is that processing thing not happening between two male identifying individuals, right? Like, why is that deep down emotional, let's share our deep dark thoughts, hard with and I'm not saying it's not happening. I think it does a lot of the
Yeah,
time.
it's like a different path. It's like you try the strategy and this one worked for me, but this one didn't. And it's like when you get to this one, it's like, and then it's like, oh God, I'm so frustrated. And then that door opens,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's just like you get there, but
And how,
it's just it was like, but it was just like I'm with a male therapist. I'm taking this path. I'm going
right.
down door number one.
And how beautiful would it be if, you know, you as a male identified individual was able to, like, you know, share those deep down dark thoughts that I'm sure another male individual is experiencing as well. And like, you know, how much permission giving happens there if
Right.
you were to steer clear of some of the like strategy logistical type things and focus more on some of those taboo topics of these dark feelings that we have, and these, you know, it just would give so much permission to fellow males to go there as well, right? So
Right.
I encourage us all to push against it a little bit, like I like to do.
You know, you mentioned that, and when I first went for help back in the 90s, about 30 years ago roughly, my doctor sent me to see a psychiatrist, and I went for about 3 months. And the entire time we were there, we talked about stereo equipment. We never talked about me, what was going on with me. He never asked a question about me. I never opened up to him because I never felt comfortable enough to do so. So it really was, I mean, for want of a better term, a waste of bloody time. Nothing was fixed. He put me on Paxil, which made me go crazy. And I was reluctant to take medication again for a long, long time after that. Like for, let's see, from about 97 until 2020. I was so paranoid of what was going to happen to me, because that stuff sent me off the deep end. And in 2020, I reached out, as anybody who's watched this show knows, I reached out on February 28th of 2020, reached out to my doctor. He put me on sertraline, aka Zoloft, and it has been a life-changing medication for me. It, you know, therapy helps, meditation helps, exercise, do all the right things. You have to, it's not just the pill that fixes it, right? And it's not like you have a headache, take an aspirin, you'll feel better. It doesn't work that way. But this medication has been a tremendous difference for me. Now I need to find a good female therapist, somebody that I can really open up to. I could probably open up to a male therapist now, probably, because I've been doing a lot of work on my end. And that's been, you know, a long time since I went through that. But I think I would be more comfortable opening up to a woman. I just would be, period. And I talk to my wife about that stuff all the time. So.
Yeah. I also just want to add to the conversation. And I'm not sure how this fits in, but I just want to add to that. We're talking quite a bit in like a binary in terms of male, female, and
Right.
sort of just want to also acknowledge the other identities that exist, and consider the roles that all gender identities play within the system. So just a thought.
Oh no, it's a fair statement. Thank you.
No, absolutely. But speaking of that, though, if someone, because the calls could come for two reasons in that situation. You're actually struggling with that part, because you're on your journey of finding out what your identity is and how it is you're going to live that truth authentically. And then you could just be a person who is transgender, who, like every other person, is having a mental health issue, but you want to go someplace where you know you're going to be safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I honestly, that's where peer support comes in. I think that's an area where peer support is so meaningful and effective is with some of those identity challenges. And there's just so much stigma and homophobia and transphobia that people go through that it's really hard to understand. Like, I'm a cisgendered female, and honestly, I couldn't I have experiences with confusion and, identity crises, but not nearly to the extent that somebody who's going through transitions like that might experience. And so making sure that transgender individuals are able to talk to other transgender individuals about those experiences, I just think are so key, and just another example of where peer support makes perfect sense to me. I'm a little bit tired of trying to, I get asked all the time, what's the evidence that peer support works? And I'm so tired of answering that question, right? Ask somebody who's experienced houselessness, whether talking to somebody else who's previously experienced houselessness and is now, housed and thriving and all that. Ask them, hey, would it be helpful for you to talk to somebody else who's been through this experience? It's who's going to say no to that? You know what I mean? What is that not helpful? And so if I have to spend one more dollar on trying to prove that peer support works, I might lose my mind. Yeah.
As somebody who's gone through group therapy, I can tell you it works in ways that I didn't know it could.
Yeah.
It was incredibly eye-opening to me, because it was like to sit in a room full of people who were going through the same thing as you. Even though, it made me actually feel better. Not that other people were suffering, but that somebody else understood what I was going through. And that made a tremendous difference in my life. I was able to really open up when that, I think about the third or fourth group session, I just let it flow. And here's the irony. The session was run by a gentleman. There were 2 men and 12 women in the group. So I felt really comfortable opening up. I didn't feel threatened. And the other gentleman that was in there, he was a stay-at-home dad. So he was in touch with his emotions more so than I've ever been. And the guy running the therapy, he's a great doctor. We had a lot in common. He's a lot older than me, but just somebody I was really able to connect with. And I recommend group therapy. I really do. Peer group makes just being able to relate to somebody who knows what you're going through made a tremendous difference. And again, it's not like I'm suffering, they're suffering too, this is great. That's not it. It's just knowing that somebody fully gets what you're going through. That made a huge difference for me.
Completely. And it's the beauty of peer support. And I think in the past, and still presently, we do benefit from sharing stories, right? They're sort of getting up on a podium and talking about my lived experience and how I overcame X, Y, and Z struggles. That is very helpful. And I think that the peer support today has gone a little bit beyond that, in that I'm not here to get up on a podium and tell you about all of the achievements that I've achieved. As a peer supporter, my job is to sit next to you on a level playing field and say, yeah, I've managed to do this, this, and this, and I still struggle with this, 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 and this. What are you struggling with? And can we try to figure this out together, right? And so you're describing group therapy and just hearing about those experiences from peers being so valuable, and just feeling not alone and feeling oh my God, you get it. And so if we take those interactions that involve oh my God, you get it, and then add a little sprinkle of training and skills and stuff for those individuals, then that's, I think, where I've seen some of the most beautiful, meaningful, outcomes come from. If I can share, I support a program that involves having peer support workers, young adult peer support workers in the emergency department of a hospital.
Yes.
And those hospital experiences for young people can be real crappy. And that was the impetus to starting the program, was that the hospital recognized that they were not doing enough for mental health for young people. So young people would come to the hospital with anxiety attacks, self-harm, suicidality, all of those types of things. And the hospital would say, well, you're not actively suicidal now, and so we're not going to hospitalize you, and so you go home now, right? Have a nice day, right? Which is just not enough, right? Obviously, that's an opportunity to sort of turn things around for folks and to get them connected to resources and stuff like that. Right. So anyway, so we introduced peer supporters into that emerge department for young people. And those are some of the most impactful stories I've ever heard of young people coming into the hospital, being able to have a 20, 40-minute conversation with a peer supporter who says hey, this is really shitty, eh? You know, like this has been crappy. This has been horrible. Like, you know, you haven't been treated the way that you want to be treated. You know, I've been here too. Let's see what kind of supports we can get you connected with outside of the hospital so that you hopefully don't have to come back here. And if you do, then of course come back. That's all good. But yeah, anyways, it's just been some of the most impactful, like heartwarming experiences of meeting people where they're at and sort of championing people that have been through those crappy situations and using that to help normalize and help just like make people feel a little bit less alone in those really scary crisis type scenarios. So, yeah.
When people come to you and they've been with you for a while, in your experience, and what you've noticed, what kind of transformation usually? Like, I know it's gradual over time, but you work at it for a bit. What have you witnessed in terms of peer support making a difference in people's lives?
I think one of the like biggest things that I notice is like this flip. So people will come, you know what I mean? And when they come, they're very much like, I need help. I need you to give me the answers. I need you to tell me what to do here. You know, I need, I'm lost. I'm alone. I'm the only one feeling this way. And I need you to guide me through this. Right. And hopefully, and often what I see is that by the end of the interaction or along the way, you know, in peer support, I'm not going to give you the answers because ultimately I have no idea what's best for you. You know what I mean? You have lived your entire life in your body and with your family and with everything going on around you. You know better than I do what's going to be helpful for you. So I'm not going to give you the answers here, but I'm going to walk beside you while we figure this out together. And I do a lot of like empowering, right? So I'm going to give you the tools so that you can apply them to your own life. And so what I see is that by the time the interaction's finished, people walk out with the mentality of, I know how to handle this. You know what I mean? I know that I can do this. I know that I'm actually in a little bit of control here. You know what I mean? And just feeling that difference between walking in, head down, you know, weight on your shoulders saying, please help me because I don't know what to do. And then having people walk out with this newfound sort of confidence of like, I got this, I can do it. It's not to say everything's fixed. It's not to say that there's no more feelings of depression or that there's no more anxiety or that there's no more thoughts of suicide even. But they're walking out saying, yes, I might have these thoughts, but I have some tools in my tool belt to be able to combat this. And I think that is a big deal. You know what I mean? For people to be able to walk out feeling like they can do something about the situations that they're in. And that's a huge, huge thing, you know?
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know that exact feeling of you're just so desperate for help, so desperate. And then you seek somebody out and you're literally at the end of your rope. You don't know what else to do, where else to go, who to turn to. You're in pain. And that's the thing that people don't necessarily understand about mental health is that depression is physically painful. It's physically painful through your whole body because your body is kind of shutting down on you because you just can't cope. So I know that feeling all too well. And I'm thankful I got the help I needed. And there's no cure, right? I have met some people who had an issue, took the medication, their doctor said you don't need it, they weaned them off it, and they were fine and never needed it again. In my case, this will be endemic for me. Yeah. I'm going to need this for the rest of my life. I'm fine with that. Now, if I could find something, they say, if you take this special mushroom, this will fix you. It'll reboot your brain and you'll be good. If you could give me proof that that's the case, I would do it in a heartbeat. But that's ongoing science. They don't know yet. Works for some people, doesn't work for others. And, I've been a guinea pig once before. I don't want to do it again. So I'm waiting for the science to be a little bit more solid on that before I go down that route. That's for me. That's my choice. What you do with your body for your mind is your business, not mine. So I don't judge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm like, there's no question. I mean, it's so funny. I think we talk about mental health, right? And we've sort of shifted the conversation from mental illness to mental health. I mean, we still talk about mental illness and I do believe that we need to acknowledge that there is a spectrum of experiences, right? In physical health, we acknowledge that having a cold is a little bit different than having cancer, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? And there's a spectrum of sort of severity and stuff like that. And I do believe that sometimes when we talk about mental health so generally and mental health awareness so generally, we are doing a bit of a disservice to acknowledging that spectrum of experiences. So, but I think, yeah, what you're saying is just, it makes so much sense that for some folks, it's going to be 2 years worth of medication or whatever, and then they're going to be able to get off of that. And for some folks, it won't be, and that's okay. And that doesn't, you know what I mean? That's fine. Whatever works for you is what works for you.
Well, and as evidenced by the fact that I'm on medication every day. I'm only on 50 milligrams, very, very small dose. But I had a couple of days this week where it's like, yeah, what how long would that have gone on for without the medication? How bad could it have gotten? So in my instance, if I have to stay on it for the rest of my life, I'm completely fine with that, because my life is worth living now. And for decades, it didn't feel that way. I was fumbling around in the dark for about 20 years. I mean, there's years that I look back on, and I talked to Mr. Beaver about this in the past. I says, I don't look back on it and go, I lost all that time. Oh, it's done. It's over. I can look forward to the future. I cannot change the past, so I'm not going to dwell on it. Yeah. But if somebody asks me, do you wish you've gone for help sooner? Honestly, no, because I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready to get the help sooner. I really wasn't. So if I had gone sooner, I don't know if it would have worked out well.
I think I resonate with that too, because in peer support, and I was talking to my therapist a couple weeks ago, and she asked me the question of, Allison, do you think it's at all problematic that your entire career is tied to your mental illness? And I was like, let's just address that next week. Let's not, that sounds like a next week problem. But honestly, if I hadn't gone through what I've gone through, I wouldn't be the human that I am. I wouldn't have the empathy and compassion that I have, because, if it had been sort of 6 months of, oh, this is really tough, and then I found the magic pill and was better, then I would not be empathetic to people that I see, experiencing houselessness. I would not be empathetic to people experiencing substance use issues and, undiagnosed mental health challenges and stuff. I have so much empathy, I think, and so much compassion and such a desire to understand, things like racism and stuff. I just have such a desire to understand that, because of not saying that I've experienced racism, obviously, but I'm just saying that my having experienced some degree of hardship makes me attuned to others' hardships and struggles. And anyway, so yeah, I think I'm in the same boat, that I wouldn't really change it, despite how freaking brutal it was.
Oh yeah, no, and I completely agree. I wouldn't change it either. And it was brutal. But I wouldn't be who I am without it.
Yeah.
And again, you wouldn't have that compassion, that empathy, that ability to understand if it was just, you felt bad for 6 months, you took some medication, now you're 100%. That was like a blip in your life.
Yeah.
Whereas when you've gone through it for decades, you approach it differently. You have more compassion and more empathy. And I'm going to go off on a little tangent for just a second, then I'll turn it back over. One of the things I've noticed about society is mental health issues and poverty go hand in hand. A friend of mine the other day said to me, I need to go see my therapist because my concern is about money, but I can't afford to see my therapist. Do you see a problem there? Because I do.
I see a problem. I mean, I see a problem on 1,000,010 levels that, anyways, but I think that's part of what CMHA is trying to address, is acknowledging the connection between social determinants of health and mental health. And the fact that you just made that statement of I'm experiencing poverty, and so I need to get help. And the only thing that comes to mind is paid for therapy services. It costs at least $150 an hour is a problem in our system, and it needs to change, right? It does, right. We're supposed to have universal health care. We do not, because
not even close.
Healthcare does not cover most mental health services, right? And that's just such an issue. And it's something that CMHA is doing a lot of work to try to flip that, to call in and hold the government accountable, saying, no, you do not provide universal health care. Healthcare is a human right. and you're not giving us access to what we're entitled to. So yeah,
I think so many problems in society could be dealt with very quickly and rapidly if we had A, universal mental health care, A, and B, a universal basic income.
I completely agree. Yeah.
I think that, like, literally, I think
Yep.
society could change overnight if we could institute those policies over the next year and a half or something like that. We would see the difference almost immediately, much like how they've seen the difference with $10 a day childcare.
Yeah.
And how many women have gotten back into the workforce like that. They said it happened way faster than they predicted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know the solutions are there. It's to be honest, in my opinion, it's a question of who benefits from these solutions, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
And if the wealthy and powerful don't benefit, they don't want them.
better
they will
you
make
said
sure
it than
that
I did.
Well, I call it out all the time. If
Yeah.
they don't benefit from it, they're going to see to it that it never gets instituted. And you can look at the privatization of our healthcare across the province of Ontario, thanks to our premier. And I'm not going to go off on that tangent right now, but you know the direction I'm going.
I do, and I agree. It's wild to see and witness, and it's sad, honestly. But yeah.
Yeah, it's funny when you were talking about the therapist asking you that question about whether your whole life is around. It's like that happened to me too. It was like one point, there was something going on health wise, and then I got involved in advocacy for that because it's like people need to be made aware that this stuff is going on. Yes, and then all the experience that I accumulated in advocacy, landed me a job.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden I'm saying, wait a minute, I'm living in it, I volunteer in it, and I work in it. Yeah, this is a little too much. I need to get away from it now and then.
Yeah.
But I did that for about 5 or 6 years.
100%.
About 2 years before I realized that was maybe a little too much.
Yeah, and I think my partner reminds me of that as often as he can when my bookshelf is full of books about mental health and this, that, and the other thing, and social justice issues and stuff. He always
read a murder mystery.
Yeah, he says, "Why don't you pick up a light read once in a while?" Because he's reminding me that that I this can't sort of consume every single aspect of my being, which is a very helpful reminder. I'm very grateful that somebody's there to call me in and check me a bit on that.
Reading is also for pleasure and fantasy.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think we are near the end of our time. Are we, sir?
Yeah, we're very close. I just wanted to make one comment about how when I was struggling years ago and didn't go for help, I had people in my life who were concerned about me, who loved and cared for me, who would hand me all these self-help books and just change. It's a mind over matter. It's a change your mind. It's change your thinking. And that does play into it. It does. But if your brain chemistry is off, all the positive thinking in the world is not going to fix it.
Right.
And you'll have some people, what you need is prayer. That is not going to fix it. You need medication and therapy. In my case, not in everybody's case, but in my case, all the sayings, all the gratitude, that it might help you through that day, but it's not going to fix the underlying problem. The underlying problem is my brain chemistry is off.
Yeah.
And I need medication to fix it.
Yeah.
If I had high blood pressure, right? Or diabetes, I would take medication for those things.
Right. And wishful thinking about those things wouldn't change that. Right. So I completely agree. And it makes sense. And it sounds like that's exactly right in your situation. I think in one more plug for peer support, I think, that the other piece to this puzzle you mentioned, medication and therapy, and I think readiness is the other thing. And because you mentioned that everybody's throwing self-help books at you, you know what I mean? And everybody, was telling me, oh, you should try yoga, it'll help you. I'm not and I was, when somebody else is telling me you should do this, you should do that, you should do this.
Should is a rough word.
Yeah, exactly. It just was not helpful. And then eventually somebody said to me, I go to yoga, I find it helpful because of this, this, and this. It helps me in these ways. And that made me think, because they were not telling me to do it. They were telling me about how it was helpful for them. And it made me think, I wonder if this would be helpful for me. And I think that's what we do in peer support, right?
That's the best way to communicate it. It
really
is.
I'm not here to tell you what you should do. I'm here to tell you, this is what worked for me.
Yep.
It's, and food for thought is all I'm offering,
Well,
and
that's why
speaking in terms of I.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's why I always say, look, I'm on medication. It's worked wonders for me. It might not work for you. It might not be for you. Consider it. It worked well for me. Talk to your doctor. Only you
Exactly.
and your doctor can determine that. I can't.
Yep. Yep. Oh, Allison, thank you so much.
This
This
has
is
been
a
wonderful.
pleasure.
Yes.
Yeah.
One last question, though. If the kids and cubs so that are listening hear this and say, you know what, maybe I should check in.
Mhm.
How would they reach you for some peer support?
Yeah, so it depends on where they're located and what they're looking for. But Peer Support Canada's website is peersupportcanada.ca, and you can contact us info@peersupportcanada.ca, and we're able to help you find some local peer support organizations that are available to offer support.
Perfect. Right. It is there a number that or
It would be the same CMHA phone number. Sorry, I don't have it on
Yeah, no
hand,
worries.
but CMHA.ca will have the phone number that you can call in, and that's how you would eventually find me.
all right.
Yeah, there's a find help link if you go right to the who we are. Well, actually, if you go right to the homepage, there's a find help link right at the very top. If you were in crisis, how to get mental health help for others, online mental health courses, find CMHA in your area. So it's all right there.
Exactly. And 988 is also available
Yes.
if you are in a crisis that is so intense that you might be considering something permanent.
Just want
Right.
to.
So that is there. Thank you so much, Allison. Really appreciate it. And well, hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, both of you. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
And yeah, if the CMHA or peer support is doing anything at any time that you would like to our audience to know about, please know you can come back anytime. We'd be happy to have you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
take care.
Right.
Thanks for
Great.
joining us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There you go. She's just delightful, isn't
Oh
she?
yeah. Oh yeah. Like awesome. Just awesome.
I can
Just
see a whole
awesome.
bunch of people going sitting there going like this. I want her to be my friend. She's very good. I can see by her demeanor how she's good at her job.
Oh yes. Well, it's the sunny demeanor, but not pumping you with sunshine.
Right.
Right. You know, the sunny, pleasant demeanor, which is what you need,
Right.
but is not saying I'm going to fix things for you.
Yeah.
And this is what we're going to do. We're going to no.
Not like me.
No. We're going to see what works for you. And peer support is tremendous. Like I said, when I was in group therapy, it really opened my eyes. But like you say, somebody put in the chat, AA has had group. That's what group therapy is. AA is group
Exactly.
therapy. NA and AA is group therapy.
Right.
Getting up and sharing is group therapy because you have a room full of people who suddenly realize I'm not alone. And that in and of itself makes a tremendous difference in your life. Just knowing that you're not alone. It kind of takes a lot of the weight of the world off your shoulders. Is it going to fix anything? No, but you're not alone. And you can say that to somebody. You can say you're not alone, but until they experience something like a group or like somebody, my ASMR YouTube talking about it, until they experience that, they feel that they're alone. I know, because that's how I felt for decades.
Yep, absolutely. For me, when I hit my wall, for me it was completely different. I just kind of got to a point where it's like I literally had tried everything I knew how to try, and nothing had worked. I'd been a victim of my success because all my coping mechanisms that had worked before didn't work that time.
Mm-hmm. And here, Ms. Shadika, I'm the opposite. I'm not comfortable in group therapies, and it doesn't work for everybody.
I wasn't either.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. It worked wonderfully for me, and I didn't think it was. I was skeptical. And I also thought, I'm not sharing what's going on in my head with a room full of people I don't know.
Yeah.
As it turned out, I did, and it worked wonders for me.
Yeah. See,
It
for
might
me,
not work for you, though.
For me, at the space where I was at the time, I just found everybody annoying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like, that's not a real problem. I've got a real problem. What are you whining about?
Yeah.
It was just, it was, I probably was not helpful to the group. The 6 weeks I was there. I wasn't ready for that at that point. Now I'd have no problem, but then I was not ready.
Yeah.
at all. Yeah.
Miss
Miss
thing here.
Lola. It's just so peaceful.
Just sleeping right
Yeah.
on the floor.
Love it. In a sunbeam, of course.
Yes.
All right. Do we have a show, Mr. Grizzly?
We do, and I got to get rolling. So let's wrap this puppy up, sir.
All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Sharing is caring. Word of mouth is priceless. Please tell your peeps and poops all about us. To subscribe to our show via our pod page so that you don't miss an episode, scan the QR code that's under my chin or go to podpage.com/TheTrueNorthEagerBeaver, lowercase letters with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, we'll slide right into your box. All right. And if you would like to go to our True North Eager Beaver Media YouTube page, where I believe we have crossed 3,400. Yeesh. Thank you so much, everyone. Make like Kit Elaine. Go there and smash with all our buttons. Lick, click, and flick the like, share, and subscribe buttons. It makes us very, 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 very happy when you do that. And if you would like to help us in other ways, the QR code by Mr. Grizzly's head brings you to our coffee page. That's coffee.com/eagerbeaver, lowercase letters, all in one word. And that's where you can make your contribution to the Emergency Hydration Fund, because you have to keep your favorite critters moist. Haven't done it in a while.
No.
I knew you've been waiting for it. Okay. Because democracy is something that you do. Again, if you live in Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, or British Columbia, there are provincial elections coming up. Please find out what it is that you can do. It's very important. Also, if you would like to donate to the Canadian Mental Health Association, I believe that Mr. Grizzly put the link into the chat.
Yeah.
Please go there, make a donation, and that would be very, very helpful. Everything, when you donate to the Canadian Mental Health Association, they do have the ability to issue tax receipts. So if you want to support the peer support program, for example, just send them a little something. We would be very, 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 very grateful. So thank you so much for that. Let's see. I guess that's going to be it. So I'm going to say from the Beaver Lodge, this is your Eager Beaver saying it could be a tough world out there. Please be kind to and gentle with yourself. Mr. Grizzly, some words of wisdom.
Yeah, if you're feeling rough, if you're having a tough time, reach out to somebody. I know it's easier said than done. I recognize that. I know. I've been there more times than I care to mention. But all you have to do is reach out to somebody who's close to you in your life and say, I'm really struggling right now. And if they say, what's up? Say, I can't talk about it. I just need your company.
Yeah.
I just need your company.
Yeah. Sometimes you just want someone to listen. Sometimes you want advice. Sometimes you want someone to validate you. Just ask for what you need.
Exactly.
That's good. When people know, people are generally good. People want to help.
Indeed.
All right. Mr. Grizzly, please cue the cock. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, before we go, congratulations to Kit Cassie and Kit Elaine, who both have their children of various ages, I would assume, graduating or recently graduated. And to Kit Donna, just saw what you put in the chat. We are sending you big, 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 big hugs and lots of comfort. All right.
Take care. I'll see you soon.
Have a great day.